somewhat onto artificial intelligence, or at least obliquely. Now, it's well recognised that artificial intelligence is very much a double-edged sword. And in this instance, I think what I'd like to do is make the case that it can be, in effect, weaponised by various means as a trap for censorship. And I'm going to use as an example a tweet posted recently by somebody called David Atherton. Now, he, interestingly, has free speech in his Twitter profile and describes himself as a journalist, although I'd like you to consider whether or not you would agree with that description. Now, the tweet reads that a woman has been raped at the Adelphi Hotel at 8 o'clock yesterday. A 49-year-old man living in Shropshire was arrested. The hotel is owned by the Britannia Group, which extensively houses asylum seekers, although Grok was unable to confirm it is used for that purpose. Now, it's perfectly obvious he can use the internet. The Merseyside police issued a statement which said that a 49-year-old man from Shropshire was arrested on suspicion of the rape of a woman. But of course, the wording has been changed just slightly to give the impression that the man involved is not a Shropshire resident, changing it to living in Shropshire. He also makes the connection between Britannia hotels and migrants, but he doesn't check. He asks Grok instead, which, if you're unaware, and well done you if you are unaware, is the AI tool that is sort of deployed, utilised by Twitter to apparently provide answers to things that people can't think of for themselves. And the algorithm, on top of all this, rewards this tweet with 469,000 views, which is a really important point to make, because in considering what the comments might be about, I think it's fairly obvious that the insinuation here is such that he is certain that he knows the identity or indeed the ethnicity of the suspect. But of course, had he done a little bit more research, he would have found that Britannia Hotels has on the website the Adelphi Hotel listed clearly, a hotel that one can book at and indeed get in touch with and find out that it's not a migrant hotel. So free speech written down in your Twitter bio is all well and good. But of course, the point is that careless and indeed speculation of a willfully inflammatory nature is really asking for the type of censorship that the regime has no trouble in dishing out. Now, in another example, but sort of with a different bent on it, this is a tweet again from this time Andrew Bridgen, picking up a story and doing the same in a sense, which is to not attempt at all to verify the validity of it, and in fact, following any doubt in the comments, has actually doubled down on it. And if you're not able to see, this is the story that's been doing the rounds, now discredited, that 2 British Army colonels and a secret intelligence service person were captured by Russian special forces. Now, there are no primary sources given for any of this on either side. Nonetheless, it's been put out absolutely across the board, even by the Afric Times here via Adebukala Adebiego, who I think is probably Nigerian, although interestingly his news organisation, at least on LinkedIn, is listed as being in Florida. Now, this has been reported as coming from the Norwegian Steigan paper, which has issued a correction. But of course, the point here is that these corrections are never, ever brought through the mainstream. So instead, the story is discredited. All those that put the story out are discredited. But what I want to point out is the use of AI. Now, this is the photograph that went with the article, which at first glance might well look like 2 British colonels. But I'll just take you around the photograph by means of this red arrow, which if you can't see it, I apologise. But you'll notice how the passports, first of all, don't have actual proper text on them, but they appear to be hovering in the air, very obviously not actually resting on the knee. Furthermore, that is not the type of belt that would be worn by a member of the armed forces. That is not a piece of issue kit. And again, the belts are different from one another. Again, we have a missing piece of the uniform. There would normally be a rank slide at that point on the current iteration of the DPM. The pattern itself is also wrong, so that's another tell. And then a question is, what is this? I think it's supposed to suggest that it's part of a PRR radio set, but of course there is no such device that looks exactly like that. So again, sort of slightly unanswered. And finally, perhaps my favourite is this weapon, which is quite clearly being held the wrong way round. So you can see just over the chap on the left's right shoulder, there is a effectively a hand on what should be a pistol grip, except the weapon is back to front. So if you spent any time looking at it, it's actually blindingly obvious that it is a fake photograph, but it was used in such a way as to suggest that there was something to this story. Now, I mentioned that Steigan, where the story is supposed to have come from, had issued a correction, and of course, that's going to be lost in the sands of time. George Galloway also reported on this, and I'd just like to just give an idea of how this can be considered when it is addressed critically. So here's Scott Ritter talking to George Galloway about this, having thought about it.
I mean, war tourism is just another code word for espionage, for carrying out intelligence activities. Having a pair of colonels do this, though, is where I start to where the narrative starts to lose me. People tend to forget that you don't become a colonel because you're a sprightly, young, athletic individual. You're a colonel because you've been around for a while. Your brain may work better than others because it's been stuffed with more information and you've had higher levels of, command experience, but your knees don't work. Your back doesn't work. The last thing a colonel wants to be doing is war tourism in an actual war. So this is where the narrative falls apart. Until I see the colonels paraded forward, in non-AI generated imagery, I'm going to treat this story with a little bit of circumspect.
Quite right. It just illustrates how AI can be used for nefarious ends. Indeed, had the story had any veracity to it, simply by putting out artificially generated images, could sow that element of doubt and make it look like it wasn't real. And I would just conclude by saying the reason this is important is because, of course, the Online Safety Act is dealing with all these sorts of issues and indeed suppressing free speech absolutely across the board. So I would encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to sign this petition, which is on screen now. There'll be a link in the show notes, which is to repeal the Online Safety Act. And as of, I think, first thing this morning, just over 500,000 signatures. So I think a long way to go yet, but something very important that we keep pushing.
And I might add, even George Galloway got roped into that story and tweeted about it unknowingly. So a lot of top accounts basically took the bait on that. And a lot of them have come back and acknowledged that that was a mistake. So fair play.
Indeed.
But this is fake news, and it could be generated by humans or it could be generated by AI. The Grok thing really scares me. And I always warned about that, is that the final source of truth cannot be an AI engine. And this is what Elon Musk's vision of the future of news and media is. He says in the future, Grok will be the source of truth.
Yes.
He's quoted as saying that. We've showed this as well previously on the program, Charles. So yeah, a lot to talk about there in the future. Let's continue that.